Have you ever watched a Gemini suddenly become silent and immediately felt that something was wrong? One moment, they are talking, laughing, asking questions, and filling the room with energy. Then, without warning, they pull back. Their replies become shorter. Their enthusiasm disappears. And sometimes, they stop communicating completely. Most people assume a silent Gemini has lost interest, become angry, or decided to walk away, but Gemini's silence often means something far more complicated, because when the most expressive sign of the zodiac stops speaking, the real message may not be in what they say. It may be hidden inside everything they are trying not to reveal. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet associated with communication, ideas, curiosity, and mental activity. That is why Geminis are often known for being talkative, witty, socially adaptable, and mentally quick. They usually process life through conversation. They ask questions, exchange opinions, and use words to understand both themselves and the people around them, so when a Gemini becomes unusually quiet, the change can feel dramatic. Their silence stands out because communication is normally one of their strongest qualities, but interpreting that silence is not always easy. It may represent emotional confusion, mental exhaustion, disappointment, observation, self-protection, or a decision they have not yet expressed, and the biggest mistake people make is assuming that every Gemini's silence means the same thing. A Gemini can be warm and energetic one day, then distant and difficult to read the next. This contrast creates uncertainty. You may begin replaying your last conversation, wondering whether you said something wrong. You may check your messages repeatedly, looking for clues. You may even assume they are intentionally ignoring you. The confusion becomes stronger because Gemini often communicates openly when they feel comfortable. Their sudden silence can therefore feel personal, even when it is not, but Gemini is an air sign, and air signs tend to live deeply inside the world of thoughts. A Gemini may look calm from the outside while their mind is moving through dozens of possibilities at once. They may be reviewing a conversation, questioning someone's intentions, examining their own emotions, or trying to decide which version of their thoughts is actually true. Their silence may not be emptiness, it may be mental overload. One of the most common reasons Gemini becomes silent is that their thoughts are moving faster than their words. Gemini can usually speak quickly and respond instantly. But when a situation becomes emotionally complicated, their usual communication skills may temporarily disappear. They may have several conflicting reactions at the same time. Part of them may want to speak honestly. Another part may fear being misunderstood. One side may want closeness, while the other side wants distance. They may feel disappointed but still care deeply. Until they organize those contradictions, they may choose silence. This is especially likely after an intense argument, an emotional confession, or a sudden change in a relationship. They are not always refusing to communicate. Sometimes they genuinely do not know which thought to communicate first, and instead of saying something they may later regret, they retreat into their own mind. Gemini is naturally curious and mentally active, but even the most energetic mind can become exhausted. Constant conversations, social demands, messages, responsibilities, and emotional expectations can overwhelm them. When this happens, Gemini may disconnect without giving a detailed explanation. They may stop replying, avoid calls, or become less socially available. To others, this can appear cold or careless, but for Gemini, silence may be a form of mental recovery. They need time. Without questions, expectations, or pressure. They may want to read, think, sleep, watch something, change their surroundings, or simply exist without having to explain themselves. The mistake is chasing them aggressively during this phase. Repeated messages such as "What is wrong?" or "Why are you ignoring me?" can make them feel even more trapped. The more pressured they feel, the longer they may remain silent. Sometimes Gemini's silence is not withdrawal, it is observation. Geminis are highly attentive to communication patterns. They notice how people answer questions, avoid topics, react under pressure, and behave when they are not receiving attention. When Gemini becomes quiet, they may be watching what you do next. Will you become controlling? Will you respect their space? Will you show concern without demanding access? Will your behavior match the promises you previously made? A talkative Gemini can gather information through conversation. But a silent Gemini gathers information by watching. This can happen when they are uncertain about someone's intentions. Instead of asking another question, they stop giving clues and allow the other person's natural behavior to reveal the truth. Their silence becomes a test, even if they never openly call it one. Gemini is often stereotyped as emotionally detached, inconsistent, or difficult to trust. Because they can change perspectives quickly, people sometimes assume their feelings are not serious. But changing the way they express something does not always mean the feeling itself is false. A Gemini may become silent when they believe explaining themselves will not make a difference. Perhaps they have already tried to communicate, but their words were dismissed. Maybe someone accused them of being dramatic, confusing, or dishonest. Or perhaps every attempt at honesty turned into another argument. Eventually, Gemini may decide that silence is safer than repeating themselves. This silence carries disappointment. It says, "I have thoughts, but I no longer believe you are willing to understand them." And this is one of the more serious forms of Gemini silence, because it often develops after repeated communication failures. Gemini is associated with communication, but that does not mean they reveal every emotion easily. In fact, some Geminis use humor, intelligence, stories, and constant conversation to avoid showing how deeply something has affected them. They may talk around the pain instead of speaking directly about it, but when the emotion becomes too powerful to hide, they may shut down. A silent Gemini may be hurt more deeply than they want anyone to know. They may fear that speaking will expose vulnerability. They may worry that their voice will shake, that they will say too much, or that someone will use their honesty against them later, so they create distance. Their silence becomes emotional armor. This is why a Gemini who appears completely unaffected may actually be struggling internally. The absence of words does not always mean the absence of feeling. Sometimes it means the feeling is too intense to translate. Not every Gemini silence is innocent or temporary. Sometimes they are angry. Gemini can debate, argue, and express frustration openly. But when they become extremely disappointed, they may stop arguing altogether. This can be more serious than raised voices. When a Gemini still explains, questions, or challenges you, they are often still invested in the connection. But when they become completely silent, they may be emotionally detaching. They may have reached a point where they no longer want to convince you, correct you, or ask for change. This silence can indicate that they are mentally preparing to move on. The important clue is the emotional temperature. If they are simply overwhelmed, their silence may still feel soft or uncertain. But if they are deeply upset, their energy may feel cold, controlled, and final. They may answer politely while removing emotional access, and by the time most people notice the difference, Gemini may have already made an internal decision. Gemini is often skilled with words, but that skill can also make them highly aware of the consequences of language. They know that one sentence can change a relationship. They understand that words can be remembered long after emotions have passed. When they are angry, confused, or emotionally overloaded, they may go silent because they do not trust themselves to communicate carefully. They may want to say something sharp. They may be tempted to expose every hidden frustration at once, or they may fear making a promise they are not ready to keep. Silence, in this situation, is restraint. It may actually be a sign that they care enough not to destroy the connection impulsively. However, restraint can become avoidance if it continues too long. A healthy Gemini eventually needs to return and explain what happened. Otherwise, silence stops being protection and begins creating emotional distance. There is another possibility people often fear, and sometimes that fear is correct. A Gemini may become silent because their curiosity and emotional interest are fading. Gemini is naturally drawn to mental stimulation. They enjoy conversations that feel alive, surprising, thoughtful, or playful. When a connection becomes repetitive, restrictive, or emotionally exhausting, they may slowly disengage. At first, they may respond less enthusiastically. Then they may stop initiating conversations. Eventually, silence becomes their way of leaving without confronting the situation directly. But one silent day does not prove they have lost interest. The pattern matters more than the moment. Are they consistently unavailable? Do they avoid meaningful conversations? Have they stopped asking questions about your life? Do they appear energetic with everyone else but emotionally absent with you? A temporary silence usually comes with a return. A fading connection often comes with repeated distance. Sometimes Gemini becomes silent because they secretly hope someone will notice the change. They may not want an interrogation, but they do want emotional awareness. They want someone to recognize that their usual energy is missing. A simple message such as, "You seem quieter than usual. I am here whenever you feel ready," can mean more than repeated demands for an explanation. This approach gives them two things they value: recognition and freedom. You acknowledge their emotional shift without trapping them. For many Geminis, this creates the safety needed to reopen communication. They are more likely to speak when they feel invited rather than cornered, but this also reveals an important truth. Gemini may be excellent at discussing ideas while still struggling to directly request emotional support. Their silence can sometimes be an indirect request for reassurance. Here is the most important insight: Gemini's silence is rarely simple. It is often the moment when their internal world becomes more complicated than their ability to express it. A Gemini may be holding multiple truths at once. They may love someone and still need space. They may be angry but also afraid of causing damage. They may want to explain themselves but feel certain they will be misunderstood. They may be considering leaving while secretly hoping for a reason to stay there. Silence is often the space between thought and decision. That is why reacting too quickly can make the situation worse. Accusing them of not caring may push them deeper into withdrawal. Demanding immediate answers may cause them to say what ends the pressure rather than what they genuinely feel. The best response is not to decode every second of their silence. It is to observe the pattern, respect the pause, and create an opportunity for honest communication. First, avoid assuming the worst. Silence does not automatically mean rejection. Second, give them reasonable space, but do not disappear as a form of punishment. A calm message can show emotional maturity without applying pressure. Third, pay attention to their behavior when they return. Do they explain what happened? Do they reconnect sincerely? Do they acknowledge how their silence affected you? Understanding Gemini does not mean accepting unhealthy communication. Space is valid, but prolonged silent treatment used to control or punish someone is not. A mature connection requires both freedom and accountability. When Gemini is ready to talk, ask open questions instead of making accusations. Instead of saying, "Why did you ignore me?" try asking, "What was happening for you during that time?" That small difference can change the entire conversation. One question creates defense, the other creates room for honesty. The hidden meaning behind Gemini's silence depends on the situation, but it often points to mental overload, emotional processing, disappointment, observation, or a need for clarity. Their silence may be a pause, a shield, a warning, or a sign that they are reconsidering the connection. The key is to remain patient without becoming passive. Observe their patterns. Respect their need for space. Invite communication without forcing it, and remember, when Gemini finally speaks after a long silence, listen carefully. They may have spent that entire quiet period deciding exactly what they need you to understand. Have you ever experienced a Gemini suddenly becoming silent? Were they overwhelmed, upset, emotionally distant, or simply trying to understand their own thoughts? Share your experience in the comments, because your story may help someone else understand the Gemini in their life. And subscribe to the channel for more deep insights into Zodiac personalities, hidden behaviors, relationships, and the emotional truths most people overlook. I can also adapt this into a more mysterious, emotional, or psychology-focused narration style.